Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast YouTube channel, the place where episodes are untouched and uncut. My name is Martin Harries, your host. I'm a filmmaker on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode, we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on streaming. I pick a favorite film from that topic and battle it out against a guest to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, hit that like button and subscribe. Please enjoy the show. Hello, welcome back to part 2. And as always, you've got to know by now, this is the part where we have a look at your Instagram responses from the previous episode. I know that was a long time ago now, but I need a break, people. We explain why in Kiki's delivery service. But the last episode, we had a look at prequel films where we talked about X-Men First Class and Prometheus. Both not great, to be honest. But one of us is bored. Sam went with Temple of Doom, technically a prequel. Claire from Why the Flick went with Star Wars Rogue One. Very good choice. Jake from the Movie Boners went with, said, really good question. I had the hardest time thinking of one, but probably Paranormal Activity 3. The Matt and Mark Movie Show said Prey, the prequel to Predator, and Anton Kinnerlove went with Cruella. I'm curious, guys, what's your favorite go-to prequel film?
Well, it's really funny that you mentioned Prometheus and X-Men First Class because I agree that they are both not very good films. But when I tell you X-Men First Class, I guess just hit me at a moment in my life. I saw that in theaters almost 8 times when I was in high school.
Jesus.
So I guess I have to pick X-Men First Class.
8 times.
I agree. It's not a very good film, but sometimes the not good ones are the best ones. It's James McAvoy, actually. I'm a big McAvoy fan.
I love Fassbender. I think he's great in that
film.
I
love him. I mean, I love him too. They're both great.
Yeah. Christina?
Well, I just drawing on my own memory and not in any way on what Google might have selected for me. If I want to be pretentious, I'll say Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me.
Right.
But if I want to be more honest, I'll say Monsters University.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
I don't know.
It's okay. Google, you are bad.
Yes,
good.
Google, you are not great. Oh, Mac, there's a SpongeBob movie, Sponge on the Run.
Of course.
I don't think I saw that one.
How about you, Martin?
Well, I picked Prometheus on the podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I love that
I'm
movie
a big
too,
alien
though, to be
movie.
honest.
I'm a big alien film. I'm a big alien fan, and I was so excited for that film when it came out, like super giddy. And the trailers looked amazing, just like the best trailer ever. And then you watch the film and you see all the good bits were in the trailer. So I was like, oh god. Yes, mixed bag for me with that one. But of course, this episode we are talking anime films, and it's my turn, people. And as you might know already from listening to part 1, I'm pretty new to anime, dipping my toe, and my god, my choice is quite a movie. I went with the 1998 film Akira, directed by Katsuro Otomo. I probably butchered that, but oh well. I love this film. I mean, there were other films in contention. I kind of wanted to go the non-Miyazaki route. I just love kind of what I've seen, the cyberpunky darkness of some animes, and it was either this or Ghost in the Shell. I know that's a very famous one that people love, but I ultimately went with Akira because everyone kind of says you need to watch this to get into anime, and I always remember, like, I'm a big Jordan Peele fan, and he references the Akira slide at the end of that film, where one of the characters literally slides their motorbike, and he's like, "Yay, I did the Akira slide!" Like, okay, I really need to see that movie. And yeah, my God, it's pretty awesome, I must say. So what happens in Akira? Well, going to IMDb, well, a secret military project endangers Neo Tokyo when it turns a biker gang member into a rampaging psychopath who can only be stopped by a teenager, his gang of biker friends, and a group of psychics. As always with IMDb, it very much simplifies what this film is, what these films are. But yeah, my reaction to this was of astonishment, really, of just how big this film is in terms of its scale. I was just like, wow, I did not expect how... I knew it was going to be like stylized and there would be some good action scenes in there, but it's horrifying at moments. It's surreal at moments. It's pretty nuts, and the action is pretty insane. And the biggest thing is just the sheer ambition of this film, like the ideas that they're going for here in terms of science fiction is crazy. You just don't really see that very often. Like there's in a lot of sci-fi films, when it's high concept, they kind of go to a certain point in their idea and just stick with that. But then with this film, there's this idea and of like pure energy, and there's literally stuff about we see a lot of films with god complexes, like overly done, but I feel like this one takes it to another level entirely, and it's just quite incredible, really. Yeah, what did you guys make of this one when you first saw it, Christina?
Well, you can go first.
This was a first watch for me, but I watched it 3 times before in order to get ready for this, and I still don't understand what happens at the end, so you guys will have to help me with that. Yeah, I also was just like amazed, because it seems to be one thing when it starts off, and then at the end, you're talking about creating a whole new reality, I guess. And so, yeah, talk about ambitious.
Yeah,
it certainly is.
Mac?
I I first saw this movie also when I was a kid, because my dad loves this movie, and I actually have it on Blu-ray. And I think as a kid, I again could not appreciate it. Maybe I got a little bit bored. But as an adult now watching it again, I was just like, oh my God, like can't look away. The animation is so staggeringly amazing. Like it's just whammy after whammy of just, you can't believe what you've just witnessed. And it's so beautiful and horrible. And I mean that like affectionately.
Yeah.
And gosh, I just love this movie so much. And as you said, the surreal sequences are just like mind-boggling. They really just I don't know. It's incredidy. No words.
Yeah. Not great for a podcast, Mac, but
yeah.
But I totally get what you're saying though, Christina, with the fact that you're asking, like, I don't really know what happens at the end, but I think that's part of why this film is great for me, because I feel like the film is just going for such a high concept idea that we don't really fully understand it in the first place. It's that ambitious, so I kind of admire it for that. And like, I don't think anyone can really fully understand what happens at the end. It's sort of like at the end of 2001, like no one really understands what happens at the end of that movie either. So I think that's a total legitimate feeling to have at the end of this film for me. So directing then, like I really enjoyed the bike chase at the beginning. Like it
Yes.
felt really brutal at times when one of the guys gets thrown through the restaurant window. I also noticed something that Miyazaki doesn't do in Kiki's Delivery Service is that he doesn't do whooshy lines. You know, there are a lot of like whooshy lines here that wash out the background of the skyscrapers, and it's quite subtle at times. And I really liked it because it just emphasizes the characters more in these tense moments when a character's about to hit another one on the bikes, you know, and everything just looked so clear. I knew exactly what was going on, and I'm not sure you can say that about modern animated action scenes sometimes. And of course, the bike slide was awesome. The light trails looked great as well, just really well done.
Yeah, the light trails were one of my favorite things because I think that is so cool that it feels so of the time that this movie came out. Because I just noticed watching a lot of concert, or I have a lot of like DVDs of Queen concerts, and something
Okay.
I had noticed was a lot of like, those big stage lights. Then when they move the
Yeah.
camera, the light trails after it, and that's just so cool that they captured that in animation. I feel like that's
Mm.
such a great idea and so stylistic. And there were so many moments where it did feel like they were going for a camera effect, but in animation. And it's done so well. And there's so many moments that you feel like it should be 3D animated. And I'm not sure
Yeah.
if it is. It seems like it was all done manually, which in itself is mind boggling because there's so many really technical things like with buildings crumbling or machines moving that it's
Yeah.
like, how did they do this?
Yeah. Even in animation, you're like, how did they do this?
Yeah.
It's kind of incredible sometimes. There's definitely, I don't have a note for this, but there's definitely one point during the final fight where I think just before, um, when Tetsuo escapes the facility and he's kind of fighting the other grey skinned kids, as I will refer to them, um, uh, like the background plate kind of just like wobbles a little bit, and it's just like it feels like super experimental, but it just kind of worked so well in that moment. Do you know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it was so good that bit. Uh, the fact that the fact that this film is so rich anyway, they're still trying to push the boat out in terms of what they can do with their animation. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so cool. One choice I found really powerful is the use of silence with quite graphic images here. Like the first time I noticed it is when the little grey skinned kid in the street sees the little fat guy in his like little glass pod thing, you know, and all the helicopters and street noises go silent and you can't actually see anyone but this guy and hear his voice. You can just hear his voice. Uh, then when Tetsuo reunites with his biker gang and he's finished beating up this rival biker, his head starts hurting, and you hear some bell sound effects with quick flashes of like huge mutations going on, but with no sound effect, with no sounds to go with that at all. Then they reduce the soundtrack even further and just have Tetsuo heavy breathing while the ground cracks open and he falls into the machine, this massive machinery thing. Then that doesn't seem to be real. He like falls to his knees and his guts fall out. Then we go back to
Yes.
reality. So we have all this crazy imagery with just breathing, which I found very bold and unsettling. And I think if you had a weird kind of soundtrack going on as well on top of this, you would just get pure shock value rather than this unsettling feeling where you have to take a second to realize what's going on because of the lack of sound to go with these images. So super bold. I love that sequence in particular in the street.
Yeah, me too. The like the scrabbling he's doing as he's trying to put back his guts, even though now you
Yeah,
see that his they did not fall out of him, is just it's like tragic. That
absolutely.
they the I love it when movies do a great job of making you not know what's going on so that they
Yeah.
can convey that the character doesn't know what reality is, because
Mm,
not everybody does that well, but I think this
no.
movie does it well, where you're both amazed by the surreal aspects, but you're also like, so what is going on? But you're
Yeah.
interested to know what is real. It's not just anger and confusion, or it wasn't for
Yeah.
me in those moments.
Yeah, for me it's the sound, because like the sound does not match up, because one, there's hardly
Hmm.
any of it and it's just him breathing, and yet the ground is opening up, there's crap everywhere, and it's just like, oh my god. Yeah, you definitely get that sense of confusion, um,
Yeah.
rather than just pure shock. uh, I loved how trippy this film can get, especially with Tetsuo's character. Later, there's a scene where he goes like all minimalist, where Tetsuo is playing with a friend in the park, and it's all grey and white tones, and the ground suddenly falls away again, and then he starts to crumble away himself before he wakes up. And then later, I think he's in the facility, trying to sleep in this hospital place, and it's like a scene from Toy Story where this toy bear, rabbit, and cat come to life, and you're like, oh, that's cute.
Right. And
and
then
then and then it gets super horrifying, where all these toys morph into one big teddy bear and a big rabbit, and he's bleeding milk for blood. It's just wonderfully weird. You know, the wall crumbles into Lego bricks, which I kind of found funny as well. Then the car from Who Framed Roger Rabbit arrives and vomits milk on Tetsuo. Then evaporates away and turns into the grey-skinned characters who also have powers. So I love the fact that it's just not weirdness for weirdness sake in this scene. You're left with some intrigue there. Like, why is Tetsuo seeing the other kids in this facility? Also, if you loved Five Nights at Freddy's from last year, you're probably going to run home to your mummy crying. Just a warning, that is a bad film, guys.
still have not had the pleasure of seeing that one yet.
Yeah, don't. It's terrible. It's really bad. Really bad. Yeah, I loved that scene in particular. Did you like those scenes, Christina? Or was it too weird?
Yeah. No, I like weird stuff. Yeah, I thought the teddy bear was especially frightening. I thought that was really well used and conceived, and also the like, trying to put the guts inside of himself. I really enjoyed that too, and the ending, was really just like so bananas and
Oh yeah.
so like gross and scary, and I liked the combination of the wires and the flesh and all that, and I'm
Oh
sure we'll
yeah.
get to it, but
Definitely.
that was just like so amazing.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of, I mean, in the modern trailer for this, they say there is no The Matrix without this film. I just noticed so many pop culture influences from Akira. Like, you wouldn't have these types of things. Like, I had a lot of Stranger Things vibes here with the kids. They're all numbered. They're all being experimented on. It kind of makes Stranger Things look bad, to be honest. I love Stranger Things, but just goes to another level, frankly. There's a bit of Minority Report in there with the whole
Hmm.
psychic powers going on as well.
Right.
Um, the Matrix, obviously, but certainly with the Matrix, what I kind of got from this was the cable tunnels that the hovercrafts go down in the Matrix. You have that a little bit here. Um, that was the only sequence, to be honest, where I loved the action scene with like this secret team trying to infiltrate the military base. That was all kind of choreographed really well, but I feel like sometimes the animation couldn't keep up with the pace of what the scene is supposed to be going at, kind of thing, if you know what I mean. And again, kind of like what we were saying with water animation in Kiki's Delivery Service with the sweat on Gigi, like you have that a little bit here where I just feel like the water effects can't keep up, if you know what I mean. But that's just a minor gripe. But again, the design elements were really great.
Yeah, I actually noticed too that the water wasn't my favorite. Like there were some times where I just feel like or like water would hit the ground and it wouldn't soak the ground, it would just lie static on top of the ground. But the one part that I
Mm.
really liked was whenever they were in disgusting water. I feel like they conveyed that really well. Like the sludge
Yes.
seemed heavy on top of Kaneda after he falls into the
Yeah,
water, and I thought that was particularly gross and that they
yeah.
did that very well.
Yeah, I do like the choices in the tonal palette kind of thing when they do things like that, because obviously he's got a very bright red jacket and
Hmm.
they change that up a bit to suit the atmosphere of those scenes. It's, I don't know, it's like a dark browny pinky type color when they're in those scenes, so I kind of like the choices there. I think, like, certainly in the animation, I'm comparing this to Kiki's Delivery Service. I think the animation is a bit better in Kiki's Delivery Service, because sometimes when you have, like, maybe a little bit in both films, when you have like big wide shots, like they've got to like draw the characters like super small and the vehicles really small, and sometimes you lose a lot of detail, which is a shame. But again, another little gripe. But um, yeah, so but certainly in terms of the design of this film, I just lapped it all up. I was like, this is amazing, especially that sequence where the colonel goes to see Akira for the first time. It's just super cyberpunky, so much detail in the colors. Yeah, I loved that.
Yeah, I love as you said, the colors because I feel like sometimes with cityscapes, um, I think some people miss the mark on making because you're trying to go for grime, but I think sometimes it then comes off boring because it's too much gray or it's too dark. But you never have that in this movie. It's both grimy, like industrial, and bright and exciting. They have it all in there. And even when you have the super mechanical areas, it's so colorful. Like when Tetsuo is getting experimented on and that one big machine is revolving around him, it's like bright green,
Yeah,
instead of going super gray as I feel like some would. And
yeah.
then when you do have the cityscapes, it's like Kaneda and his friends, and Kaneda especially, is so bright coral or red or pink, and
Mm.
so he stands out as this like pop amongst the huge city that they're in. And then even the giant military building is this giant orange bright building,
Yeah.
so even that feels like a beacon of some sorts. It's very
Mm.
stylistic.
A lot of Blade Runner vibes in
Yeah,
those particular scenes as well.
Yeah.
for sure.
I saw a bit of the creator from last year as well, with kind of the those blue beams that you see in that movie. You have a little bit of that from the satellite towards the end of this film. Um, yeah. And also, this film is really brutal in terms of its violence as well. Like, in their motorbike chase, it's, they really don't hold back on the blood. And it's really bright
No.
red as well. And like how they treat like Kay, the girl, Kaneda's, I think it's Kaneda's girlfriend. She literally gets punched off the bike, I think, at one point, and they rip her shirt off, and
Oh,
it's just
that's
like,
that's
whoa.
Kaori,
Kaori, all
Tetsuo's
right.
girlfriend.
All
She is
right,
the
yeah.
biggest like victim in this movie. Nothing goes right for that
Yeah.
girl.
No. And even like in the class, there's a few scenes in this school, and literally the teacher is just slapping all the kids in the office, and there's blood effects in that.
Yes.
I'm like, whoa, okay, I don't want to go to that school. That is super brutal.
Right.
Yeah, and they all have like the mark on their faces, like in the next scene,
Yeah,
and somebody comments on them, like, what happened to y'all?
yeah,
Um, yeah, but even in the very, very beginning, the guy in the cute little yellow car,
Mhm.
who just kind of gets stuck in the intersection and his car gets all fucked up. Um, but yeah, people are getting knocked off of their bikes and,
Arms run over.
like,
yeah.
really violent stuff.
Mm. But I feel like you
Those
can
poor people in that
definitely,
restaurant.
I
yeah, I feel
know.
like, yeah. I feel like you can definitely go for it a little bit more in these types of films, in animation, like, and in games and in comic books than in live action films. So it's kind of nice in a way that they're not really holding back sometimes.
Yeah. Something that I do like in manga, and I looked up a little bit, I was interested as to the what this art style looked like in the original manga. And something I
Yeah.
do like, and I feel like makes violence seem a little bit less disgusting, is since it's all black and white, it's like the blood is always just dark black ink. And I feel like that
Yeah.
always conveys it very well in a way that's like, it feels brutal, but not so like sickening in a way that I
Yeah.
enjoy. Not that I did like this movie, but when I looked up some of the violent scenes in the manga, it just seemed more beautiful in a way because you don't
Yeah.
have to look at the red blood. I don't know why that squicks me out specifically.
Yeah. I mean, it's very bright here.
Yeah.
Favorite scenes, Christina?
Oh, mine is the one at the end
Yeah,
where
same.
he's, his power is overcoming him, and there's nothing that he can do about it. And there's just sort of
Mm.
like these waves of flesh. And I really like the shot of the eye. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know, there's like this huge eye, and then the flesh kind of like takes that
Mm.
over. And Mac, who's the character who gets squished?
Cowdy.
Um, Cowrie, yeah,
Cowrie.
yeah. She
That poor
just,
girl.
Mm.
she didn't. He didn't want to kill her, but he didn't. He said that he could feel her pain,
Mm.
you know, in his body, and he didn't want to kill her, but
He
he
couldn't
just had
help
no
it.
control over his power. But I thought that was just like I rewatched that scene a couple of times, so
I
I
mean,
thought it
that's
was really
the
Yeah.
really
scene, you know?
yeah.
Yeah. It is this
Sorry to be
scene.
so basic, but
No,
that's the
no.
one that
It's
really.
the scene for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, the scene definitely isn't basic. um, but I mean, I love like the whole last like 20 minutes, to be honest, just the how tonally it changes. Like the scale of the destruction towards the end of the film is quite amazing. Like Tetsuo destroys a bridge, like he lifts up this massive spherical casing that holds Akira. He destroys that and then destroys a massive satellite that's being firing a huge blast down on him. And when you think the destruction has stopped, the scale goes up a notch in all those scenes. Then I loved the tonal shift that follows with the dark and quiet atmosphere of the destroyed stadium. When Tetsuo gets a
Mm.
mechanical arm, that looked pretty cool. Then it turns super surreal and horrifying, as you said, Christina. Tetsuo literally transforms into this biomechanical giant monster, almost like a kaiju type character in Japanese cinema, and it's quite scary at times, especially when Kaneda and Kai get consumed by Tetsuo, but it definitely straddles that line of being silly and a little too funny. Um, but then when Akira literally just makes some bubbles with like pure energy, this nuclear explosion goes off, and then when we get this really like sweet flashback of Akira and the gray skinned kids
Mm.
as normal kids. Uh, which was really sweet and great. Plus, we get like a scene of Tetsuo and Kaneda's first meeting. Tonally, it couldn't be more different. Narratively, you would probably expect that, but because the scale is so huge, you don't expect it so much to see something so sweet in some of the final moments when a lot of this film is so dark tonally. Um, so yeah, I just love the tonal shifts in those last action scenes. It's quite remarkable, really. Yeah. Favorite scene or shot for you, Mac?
I mean, I also very much love the end, and I think it's such a great moment because, you know, after Tetsuo gets his powers, there's so many moments where he's like, look at me now, Kaneda. Like, you always thought, you were going to save me, but I'm so much more powerful than you. And then now he's so massive, and there's a moment right before the light hits him where he calls out for Kaneda. Like, now he
Yeah.
needs to be saved because he has no control over this. And he still does need Kaneda. And as you said, the really sweet scene where it shows that, like, Kaneda was never trying to be like an asshole to him. I mean, I get where Tetsuo is coming from. He just wanted to
Yeah.
feel powerful, but like Kaneda always just was trying to be, like a big brother, or like wanted a friend himself. Um,
Mm.
and but I also just love any scene where Tetsuo is just really feeling his power. Like, I think it's a pretty sad scene, but when he goes back to that bar from the beginning and just and you don't see him kill the
Yeah.
bartender, but then you see Yamagata and Kai come back, and um they just see the destruction, and I think that is so powerful. Like, you don't have to see him kill them,
Mhm.
because after that scene cuts to black that he's killed that guy.
Oh yeah.
um and but it's so sad, and that Yamagata literally asks, like, are you Tetsuo, because he can't recognize the person in
Yeah.
front of him. I think that is so powerful.
Yeah.
And then later Kai crying about Yamagata, because these guys are so tough, like they're
Yeah.
they're tough teens, and they ride on bikes for fun and f- try to challenge intense gangs, but they
Clowns.
still hurt when one of them have been killed. And I think that was
Yeah.
special to see that these people are still people.
Yeah, they definitely bring the human element right at the end and in that scene, and it just shows really great confidence that they don't need to show Tetsuo kill that bartender in that scene, because they know they've got some incredible stuff coming up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So they don't need to go down to that like simple level of just trashing a bar
Yeah.
and killing this
and
guy.
and that they've done such a good job to establish him up to that point that you, the viewer,
Yeah,
like,
you know what's going
they
on.
don't have to show you.
Yeah. So directing score, guys, what you going for Akira?
I'm gonna give it 8.5, because while I do really love the animation, and I know that's still a high score. I think the animation is incredible, but I do feel like there are some times where you don't always know exactly what's happening, at least for me. And I feel like
Right.
some character designs, I wish that they had been a little bit more differentiated, because in particular there were times where I got the Colonel and Ryu confused, because those guys look so similar to me. Like, they have the same face shape, they both have a mustache, and there are times where you're like, wait, why is the Colonel here? And then you realize, no, that's not the Colonel, it's Ryu. And I know
Right.
that's just the art style, but they could have added a little bit of something. I don't know.
Hmm.
If you really don't know what's going on, you will be further confused by
Yeah.
some directing, I think.
I definitely think you have to watch this more than once. And I understand that this is like a favorite for a lot of people, and they probably watched it over and over and over as children. But this was a first time watch for me, and I had to watch it at least 2 times to just have a basic understanding. And like I said before, I still don't have a full understanding of everything that happened. So I'm with you, Mac, on that.
I mean, I've only watched it the once, but I was very overwhelmed, but I just kind of loved that feeling of overwhelmness of like, I love everything in this. I want to see it again because
Oh,
I just want to
Martin,
see it again.
so I just assumed that you watched this a ton as a kid. Is
Oh
that
no,
not the case?
no, I've never seen
Oh,
this.
wow. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Do you agree with that, Christina? 8.5?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm gonna go pretty high, to be honest, in the nines, because I just adore the design elements of this. Yeah, for some reason I'm getting a lot of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles vibes as well, like the animated show when I used to watch as a kid. Just the whole sci-fi retro look of it, like how grungy it is. And I feel like, yes, the animation is probably better in Kiki's Delivery Service, but I think it just makes up for that with how amazing it looks, and just the design elements are so good. So I lapped all that shit up. So I'll probably go like a 9.7.
I think that's
pretty high.
fair. I think it's like I do really like it. Like, don't get it twisted. I think this is like so beautiful, and again, like the work that must have gone into it, I can't, like, I literally can't fathom, because
Mm.
like even small animations are just so fluid. And I was mentioning this to my mom earlier, like I love anime, but something that it doesn't do as much is like a fluid animation. It's kind of known for more very detailed shots that don't do as much. But
Yeah.
the whole point is that the shots are so detailed that, and the frame rate is kind of lower, that you can kind of put the pieces together. But then in Akira, it's like it's both beautiful and it's like the most fluid animation you've ever seen. It's mind-boggling. So I'll go
Mm.
back up. I'll go to 9. I'll
You
edit
sure?
mine. Yeah, I'll edit, because now I think about it,
Okay.
I'm like, the scale of this really is incredible. And for the whole 2 movies, I only noticed one mistake. There's a moment
Right.
in the stadium where the colonel, they just forgot to color in his mustache and his hair. I only noticed it for at one part, but I was like, you know what? One mistake in this whole 2-hour movie. I mean, come
And
on.
it's like
Yeah.
2 hours. I mean,
Two
that's a
hours,
lot of
yeah.
Yeah.
drawing.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, the animator must be like, yeah, the Colonel should age really quickly in these moments. Let's just have a grey mustache, white mustache. It's interesting as well with this film, just how influential it is on other, comics and cinema. It's just huge, and like it's interesting that Hollywood has tried to remake this in live action a lot. There's been talks of Taika Waititi trying to make this years ago. There's still nothing really happening with that. I kind of wish they do one, and I kind of wish they don't, because it would be incredible if they do it in live action, but it has to be like perfect. It would
Yeah.
be really scary if they do it, but if they do it right, then yeah. But if they do it wrong, it could look absolutely dreadful. So, I kind of hope they do never, I kind of hope they never do it. But at the same time, if they get the right people and the money, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like where
That'd be
things are.
interesting.
Or you go.
Go ahead, Mac.
Oh,
I was just thinking about like the colors. I wonder how they would do that with live action, because the only movie that kind of springs to mind like that is Dick Tracy, which was,
Right.
um, crazy in terms of the colors and everything. Um, that would be interesting to see if a director went with that choice in a live action film.
yeah.
Because I like the colors in the animated Akira. I just think it's,
Absolutely.
but that's just such a, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's like so specific to animation. I don't know if you could translate that into live
Yeah.
action.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely difficult. And also with like, remakes in general, not just live action remakes, that you definitely have to make decisions on how you make your version unique to the original. So there would be some things where you have to make a pass on, and just like, we can't really do that. We have to do it this way. Obviously, that's always going to rub some fans up the wrong way, but sometimes it's kind of needed. But who knows what will happen with Akira in the future. Right, screenplay then. The atmosphere and tone of this film is so rich in like neo-noir, cyberpunk aesthetics. I loved it so much. The way the color palettes are so dark and grungy, as well as so vivid and neon. Like, I love the fact that the film doesn't seem to be in a hurry to move on with the story. It just takes its time getting to know these characters. Like, story wise, it's fairly noiry in how it tells it for me. Like, especially with like the mystery around who and what happened to Akira. Like, the military are experimenting on people, and they seem to have powers, not just kind of like psychic powers. There's other kind of Professor X type powers there as well. There's like a set of people who literally worship Akira like a god, a religious figure. Like, the
Yeah.
politicians don't even know whether Akira marked the end of World War III in that explosion right at the start of the film. So I like how visually rich this film. Sorry. So I like how visually rich this film is, but the story is really held back. you get a sense that Akira is super powerful, but you don't know how or why. Like, I love the big sequence where the Colonel goes down that massive elevator to see Akira, but it's just like this huge blue soaked blob, it looks like, with a name badge and a number. And it's just so bizarre. You don't really know what to make of it at all in that scene. So I love how they really hold back what and how, what has happened to Akira. I do love that.
I think, yeah, it makes the reveal at the end that he's just these body parts and all these slides. You feel as
Yeah.
struck as Tetsuo does because, I guess he's just trying to search for some meaning too into why this is happening to him and why he has these powers, and it's like there is none, kind of like it's been done in a way. And it's so horrifying also when you conceptualize it, like, then you
Mm,
see Akira later as he was a child, but then when you hear the colonel say, we did every experiment on him like that you could do, and now here he is,
yeah.
it's like that's disgusting, it's horrible. And then you see these
Mm,
children, and like the only reason that they are so placid and willing to help the military, it's like they're not actually children, they're adults, and
mm,
they've just been held in this suspended state, and they took their lives from them basically, and
yeah.
they're saying that this is the only way to make sure that a person wouldn't abuse these powers, I guess. Though the kids also say that this is a choice that Tetsuo is making. Anybody could have these, but he's making the choice to be as destructive
Mm,
as he is. And but then you have all this beginning part to show you why a young person would be that destructive, though, because what world do they have? Like, what world was
yeah.
Tetsuo ever given? And I think it's a I
Mm,
think it's a great, even though obviously you shouldn't do what Tetsuo is doing, he's killing so many innocent people. At the same time, it's like, but why, what what reason did they give him to not ever be this way? He was only ever
mm,
abused, and the only solace he had was another child who's in the exact same position as he is. That's not fair. Like, and the world was
yeah.
never fair. And then you see the dumb fucks running, the country, and they're horrible. And the colonel
All
himself is a
corrupt.
horrible dude. So it's like these guys have no future. And the colonel even says in the moment with the scientist where he's like, I lost all passion for reconstruction, and now there's just a bunch of hedonists in this town, so it's only like the structure of the city that I care about. That's horrible. Like, you don't
Just
care about the humans there?
yeah.
Why do you think they're
Just
like
care about the
this?
buildings that they live in.
Yeah. So I think that's special that they, that you have the beginning with the student rioters, and it's like Tetsuo is just basically that, but on like a cosmic scale. And
Yeah.
they're not necessarily saying that that's wrong in a way, or that he's in the wrong, because he was never given a future to begin with. So it makes sense that
Yeah.
he wants to destroy it
Mm.
all.
Yeah, I totally get that. Because it's just, I mean, I love the aesthetics of this film, but like, you wouldn't want to live there. God, no.
No. Yeah.
There's no future there at all. They're just trying to get by. Like, all these characters are just, yeah, just trying to live their best life. Trying not to use that phrase, but the only way they can is, I guess, what I'm getting at. But what I find interesting is the parallels between the relationship of Tetsuo and Kaneda in the biker gang and the colonel to the people they work with in the politicians and the council. Are similar in some ways, because Kaneda is the leader of this gang, like the cool guy in the group, the leader, like the one that everyone looks up to, and Tetsuo is always jealous of Kaneda, but it's not like laid on heavy, which I thought was good. Then the colonel feels frustrated that there's no like progress with the experiments on these kids, and basically jealous that he doesn't have all the power to do what he wants to do with these kids. And so, like, the colonel is basically dealing with similar emotions that Tetsuo is going through. You know, that's why it kind of makes it sadder for me that Tetsuo and Kaneda have been caught up in this military experiment, in these military experiments, and it gets pretty horrifying for both of them, because the colonel can't handle his own problems, he can't handle his own job himself. So it's just great in that way that actually both these kind of characters are dealing with similar things, but the Colonel is an adult and he's just abusing his powers, whereas Tetsuo is kind of abusing his powers, but he didn't ask for these powers at all. The Colonel did.
Yeah.
So I love, the parallels there. And also, when you discover that Tetsuo basically has the power of a god, you get the impression it's gonna be a story about how his friends try and save him, which is what you would normally get in these types of stories. It happens constantly in these types of god complex stories, but the ideas here are so big and it goes completely beyond that idea. It's amazing. And like when we get the reveal of who and what Akira is, he's just the remains of tiny tissue organ thingies in these vials. And when you see it, it's a little confusing, but then it just shows the scale and power of what Akira is capable of, with the fact that he's literally encased in this ginormous spherical thing. It's insane. Plus how it kind of shows how scared the military scientists are of these bits of tissue, that they feel the need to bury Akira in this massive facility. Then when Akira goes full power mode, god mode, with what we perceive as a nuclear explosion, it's described as like the start of a new universe and pure energy. And at the end, like Tetsuo, Akira, and the other grey people just fall into like Kaneda's hands in the form of this little ball of light. And I'm like, what the hell? That they're going there in this kind of really creative, simple aesthetic and simple narrative choice. But I love that the story goes to places that are almost incomprehensible to imagine and to get your head around. So I just love the ambition here, that they're really not holding back at all. And I don't think a lot enough stories in general go for that. But yeah, I love that.
And kind of as you were saying before, of like, you'd expect this to be your friends trying to save you. I do love that Kaneda is not about that. And he's also not about even trying to understand what's going on. Like when the gray kids are speaking through K to him, he's just like, who cares? I don't care. And then when he gets the chance to stop Tetsuo, he's not like, my friend, don't do this. He's like, I'm going to kill you. He's like, I'm going to kill you. I need to stop you. But for him, that is like an act of love. I feel like he's like, my friend needs to be stopped, so I'm the only one who can do it. And also wanted to say that like the description that they had of what if the energy of a human was given to something like an amoeba, it really reminded me of like the Fly, of like there is no politics in the world of the Fly. So if you give the powers of man to a fly, they're just going to be destructive and eat. And like Tetsuo literally turns into a giant amoeba baby at the end and is just all consuming. I love that idea of organisms given the powers of like from an amoeba's perspective, we are gods, and you give an amoeba the power, even just a human, they turn into God basically. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I just love the fact that Akira goes to these really deep philosophical levels that in kind of some horror sci-fi books they go for, in some Dean Koontz books, where there's a story where it's very similar to this, where humans are so advanced that they kind of they continue to learn, they continue to evolve, but they end up just de-evolving, and just all that matters is just consuming energy. That's it. Like that's the only thing that's important. And it's kind of the same similar thing here with what happens to Tetsuo. Favorite lines? Definitely not many great ones compared to Kiki's Delivery Service, but there's a few I found from the English dub, from Kaneda when he's in like the just outside the K's apartment, and he says, and the secret group, I guess, that is trying to infiltrate the base. is coming towards Kaneda, and he says, "Who's this? Well, I guess sorry. Who's this? Well, I guess by saying I'm Kay's boyfriend is stretching it a bit. Depends on your point of view."
I love him.
Which is funny.
And when he says, like, when are you going to tell Ryu about us? And she's like, excuse me, us?
Yeah. I kind of like the line. Well, I didn't like it. It was just really interesting from the Colonel when he's basically about to take down all the other politicians that are trying to stop him. And he says, "Open your eyes and look at the big picture. You're all puppets of corrupt politicians and capitalists." Which is, I thought the capitalist word was a bit pointed. I was like, "Oh, okay, fair enough." Interesting. But I think my favorite line was kind of this really great one from who ends up being a corrupt politician, where he's walking along like this walkway on this skyscraper, and he's saying to someone, "In all respects, this city is saturated. It's like an overripe fruit, and buried within it is a new seed. We need only wait for the wind which will make it fall to fruition, the wind called Akira." I thought that was really great. For me, my favorite line.
And that guy does turn out to be just the worst.
Yeah, he really does. There's a weird way he dies as well. He just kind of falls. He takes like suicide pills and then just falls flat on his face. That was kind of funny as well. Christina, favorite line for you?
The only one I wrote down was, "There must be a future we can choose for ourselves." And that is spoken by one of the gray-skinned people. I found it interesting in the Wikipedia, which I looked up, the three like old elderly children are called espers, and I guess that means they have ESP. Is that a term, Mac? You're nodding your head. Is that a term like in science fiction that I'm just not aware of?
Well, I do know I've seen a lot of anime. That's my anime degree. I've seen a lot of anime pertaining to people with like precognitive or powers like that, and that is the word that seems to be translated a lot is esper, and just seems to be person with psychic powers.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Mac, you've got a favorite line?
Like I said, I loved that one with Kaneda. I love the energy Kaneda brings to this film. I again watched the Japanese version, and I am a big fan of his voice actor Mitsuo Iwata, and he just has he had this delivery that was just so funny, and I feel like you needed his little breaks of humor to break up just these like heavy ideas. You have him stumbling or him flirting that I don't know. I think it did work for me of like, oh, okay, a nice little reprieve from this like terror that I'm going through. And I do love at the end when Kay asks like, where is Tetsuo? And he's just like, I think he's just, like he kind of just gives a vague answer. Like, I think he's beyond us now. And then you just hear Tetsuo say, I am Tetsuo. I just thought that was, again, though I was confused, I thought that was a nice way to end the film.
I am in the singularity now. Right. Screenplay score, guys. What are you going for Akira?
You go first, Mom.
Your face, Mac.
I'm not going first.
I think we like this. Well, I think there are so many really great ideas in this, even if some of them are kind of confusing, at least for me. But I, like you were saying, Martin, I don't think that in terms of dialogue, there are any that like kind of really stand out. So I'm kind of torn because I think the story is really interesting, just not, sure what to do about the score. So I'm going to toss it back over to you, Matt. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to give it a complicated score of 7. And why I give the score of 7 is, I know, gasp. But it's because When I was looking this up, I read that the manga. Everybody who's a fan of the manga says, like, please, please, please read the manga because it's a 2,000-page manga. It wasn't even finished when the
Right.
movie was made, and
Oh,
I
wow.
feel like it's difficult to capture the whole story. It seems in 2 hours, and perhaps a
Mm.
short series would suit the story better. And I do feel like it can get pretty confusing. So despite liking it, I do feel like it's this movie itself is so great, but you have to give a lot of that weight to the visuals rather than
Mm.
the screenplay for me. It's my
Okay.
complicated score of 7.
Do you want to push that up a bit, Christina, or happy with the 7?
I do actually. I think 7 is too low. I would be closer to 8, I think. I mean, I, I think it's super interesting. Um, and I think there are like a lot of really good big ideas here. So,
I thought you were going lower, so I was trying to like balance. So I'll go 8 too.
Okay,
okay.
solid
Are
8.
you okay with that? 8? Yeah.
Yes. I don't know why I thought you were going to go like super low. And so I was like, oh, okay, I'll balance the scales a little bit. And then when everybody looked at me like, you monster, 7, I was like, oh.
Can't give it a 7. What's going on?
Martin's about to jump through the screen.
Well, Martin also needs a win to start off the year,
That's
to
true.
be fair.
I
went
told my
an
mom, I was
incredibly
like,
long losing streak.
whenever you ask us on, I always feel like we like obliterate because I just always have such a bias towards the ones I pick, which is
Yeah.
just how it happens to work.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to go in the high 9s. No, I will actually stay in the 9s. Just I agree, like dialogue wise and probably even character wise, Kiki's Delivery Service is better. But I just have to admire the ambition of the storytelling here. I think it's really bold and amazing. And I was confused, but I was happy that I was confused, if that makes sense. It didn't bother me because of the ambition, I really liked it. So I'll go a 9.2 for me. So voice acting, again, I had to actually watch this on YouTube. That's the only way I could watch it. So I
Oh,
definitely will
no.
get this on Blu-ray. It was the English dubbing again for me, but I think on the whole it was pretty good. Like the scale of this film is pretty huge, so the voice acting tries to match that ambition at times. Like I like the actors who played Tetsuo, again English dubbing, Stanley Gerd Jr. And Kaneda Jimmy Finders. Not well known actors, I don't think, but I think they find the right tone for the scale of this film. Like they capture this teenage feel really well. It's just some of the adult character performances I struggle with a little bit, like especially Tony Mosdy, who plays the Colonel. It's a bit kind of too over the top for me and too kind of stereotypical of what you would think of a military guy like this, if we know what I mean. So I would have thought there would be a bit more subtlety with the adult characters, but yeah, it comes off a tad goofy sometimes, but again, a minor thing.
Here's what I will definitely balance the scales because the Japanese,
Right.
you have to watch this in the Japanese
Yeah.
because whereas I said like in Kiki's Delivery Service, it just kind of felt like nothing special. There is something special, I think, in these performances because there are a lot of over the top scenes and, like you said, over the top concepts, but they're delivered in such a great way to me. And I think the characters are rounded out because of their performances. And so,
Yeah.
in particular, like I said, Mitsuo Iwata, who plays Kaneda, is great. Nozomu Sasaki plays Tetsuo, and he does just like, I don't know, he plays this like desperation off so well. And Also, I have some bias because most of these people who are in this film are in my favorite anime, One Piece, and so but
Right.
this was obviously them when they were younger, so I'm getting to hear a different side of these actors who now in One Piece are playing old people. So that was also
Mm,
great. So I
Huh.
just loved the voice acting like all around in Akira.
right. Christina, what did you make? Did you go with English dubbing as well?
I did. I watched this once in the Japanese version, and then I went
Right.
twice with
Okay.
the English,
Interesting.
just because I thought I might understand it a little better. I didn't, but that was my thought at the time. Yeah, I'm with you, Martin. I feel like the military characters were like kind of stereotypical.
Mm.
So um, yeah, I didn't love that, but I mean, it wasn't as I don't know. I didn't have that big of a problem with it. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know, Mac. How do you want to split the difference in terms of the voice acting?
I was going to give the Japanese voice acting like 9.6.
Oh wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even know what keeps it from a 10, honestly, because I just had no notes. Like, it just was so good. Like, and it made the movie better for me, like the voice acting, or even better,
Mhm.
I should say.
Is your favorite performance Tetsuo then?
My
Or
favorite performance is actually Kaneda. I think
oh
his
right,
actor
okay.
did just he brought the levity in a really great way, but also the like desperation when he's facing off with Tetsuo.
Yeah. And even like Stanley Good Jr. as Tetsuo, I thought was really good with the emotional stuff here. Yeah, I really felt it at times when Kaneda and Tetsuo are interacting, especially when he's transforming into this blob. It's quite
Hmm.
scary, and I think the voice acting does a lot of the work there in feeling their fear, both of the characters' fear in what the hell is happening to these guys. It definitely adds something for sure, not just relying on the visuals and the sound. Um, but obviously, that being said, like, yeah, I think the dubbing is better in um, Kiki's Delivery Service, so I'll probably go a solid 8 here.
One more thing I wanted to mention was I believe in the Japanese, all of the old children are voiced by children. And that gave
Right.
it a really uncanny vibe in the Japanese
Yeah.
version of you hear like what can only be children's voices, kind of clumsy and like not perfect voice acting, but perfect in a way because you're like confused because they sound so
Mm,
young. And I thought that was done very well in the Japanese.
yeah. And yet they look really old.
Yeah.
you know. I just find the decision to make them look really grey and scaly, like really unsettling as well. And then combine
Hmm.
that with the fact that you've got child actors voicing them, it's just kind of you feel so sorry for them, and it's kind of very unsettling as well. So yeah, great choice there with combining the kind of the child voices and the design. Right, let's add up the scores then for Akira. Akira gets 53.5,
There you go,
which
Martin.
wins.
A
Oh.
W.
Yay, I'm off to a winning start, people, for
Yay.
2024. Pretty tight, though. Kiki's Delivery Service gets 52.3,
Oh
so
wow.
yeah, so it's pretty tight. So just over 1 point wins for Akira. Next episode, as Argyle is out, the new Henry Cavill movie, action spy film, which kind of looks a bit naff. But we are talking Matthew Vaughn films, which will be great. And of course, we have guests for that one. Georgie, Georgia and John from the Comfort Films podcast are returning, which will be very exciting. Do check out that one as well. Guys, as always, you have been amazing. It's great to hear your insights on Anime Mac. Loved it, loved it, loved it. Again, this is your opportunity to tell us about your podcast and where can we find you?
So we're World of Horror with Mom and Mac, and you can find us in all the regular podcast places. Thanks, Martin, so much for having us on.
Yes, thank you. I was so jazzed to talk about these movies.
Yeah, I am seriously going to be going down a anime hole now of watching lots of animes. So probably Ghost in the Shell next, and all the other Miyazaki films I have not watched. Yeah, it is time to say goodbye, guys. It's time. It's goodbye from Christina. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
It's goodbye from Mac. Bye.
Bye.
And it's goodbye from me. I'm going to see if I can get the Akira motorbike for real, because it looks awesome. Bye-bye. That's it for part 2. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 1 if you haven't done so already. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us about what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Hit that like button and comment below. If you do, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Plus, check out our social media links for extra content on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for X at FVF_podcast. Remember, please subscribe. Pod signing off.